today I'm going to be adding some lime to one of my pastures, and so I just went down to the hardware store and bought up the last of the pulverized lime that they have this year. Now, what's the purpose of adding lime? To some people it may seem like a waste of money, or why would you even bother? Well, lime actually changes the pH of your soil, so you should get a soil test. You can buy the kit. I have the Soil Conservation Service come out every couple of years and check everything here to make sure everything is the way it should be. And they gave some recommendations about adding lime, so I've been adding lime. The field that I have, or fields that I have, they're pastures, so I have pasture grasses grow. And they have a recommended pH of about 6. So what happens if your soil pH is too high? Well, then your grass doesn't grow quite well. It doesn't absorb the nutrients from your fertilizer like it should. And what tends to happen is you get weak, thin grass. You'll get an invasion of weeds, because weeds tend to like a high pH. You may get some insects taking up residence there. So you want to make sure that you get a soil test done, or take one yourself, and then get the recommended amount of lime and put that down. Now, fall is one of the recommended times for pulverized lime up here in Maine. With pulverized lime, you want it to get wet, and then what it does is it helps build the soil, so it actually integrates itself into the soil, and that's what changes the pH. So it allows fertilizer to work, keeps out invasive weeds and insects, and just makes it so that your grass grows quite a bit better. So enough about that. We're going to go get Cyrus out. It's my 1953 Farmall SuperC that has been in the family since I was 5, and it'll probably never leave the family. So let's go get that, and we're going to put the fertilizer spreader on, and we'll go down to one of our pastures and put this out. So stick around. And so those of you who have been with me for a while, you know that at different points of time I've had as many as 10 Farmall tractors here at once, down to 2. And the reason for that is just because of the nature of the farming that I'm doing requires more modern equipment. So it's not that I don't like the old tractors. I really have an affinity for them, but it boils down to what I need to operate the farm and the availability of storage space. Now, people a lot of times will just pile them up outside and have quite the display, but that's not how I was brought up. I like to keep everything under cover, so we only have 2. This one right here is 1953 Farmall SuperC. We got this in 1977. We were the second owner of it. It was on a dairy farm before that, and it came with a fast hitch mower, fast hitch plows, and since then I've picked up some other fast hitch equipment like a disc harrow, planter. I had some cultivators at one time, but didn't really need them, so we sold those. Had a bucket loader. I didn't need that, so we sold that too. But anyway, 1953 Farmall SuperC. First year they came out with the fast hitch, which soon became infamous on all the Farmall tractors. The International, the IH tractors, which replaced the McCormick tractors before, they never got the fast hitch, but the Farmall tractors had the option for a fast hitch, and the fast hitch stayed in one form or another all the way up until 1979, when the last of the 140s and the Cubs rolled off the line with the fast hitch on the back, the single point fast hitch. This has a 2-point fast hitch, and they call it the small prong. The 300, 400, etc., 504s, they all had the larger hitch on it. So anyway, I haven't run this in a couple months, so hopefully it'll start right up for me. I just turned the gas on. I've replaced the fuel bowl earlier this year. Did notice I'm leaking a little bit of oil here out of the steering box, so we'll have a video on that pretty soon about checking that. But anyway, for today, let's hop on. And starter's on the right, so about 1/3 throttle. Put it in neutral, and clutch in, brakes on. Almost. These tractors are pretty finicky, so they flood out really quickly. So as soon as it starts, I usually kill the choke. got frame weights for it last summer. It's something that really was required with the disc harrow coming up out of the hill. This steering didn't work quite so well, so I found a set of these pretty cheap and put those on. Farmall SuperC replaced the earlier C. This had a bigger motor on it, and one of the bigger features of this tractor, in addition to the bigger motor, was the addition of a water pump, which resulted in a taller nose than the C. Disc brakes, and so walking around the tractor, we'll start at the back. See, the fenders were an option. These tractors came from the factory with 6-volt lights, starting motor, so you didn't have to crank it. You still had the option to crank it if you wanted to, but it wasn't required. The Monroe shocks, so this was a Monroe Easy Rider seat because of the shocks and then the spring. So it was a pretty good ride. It was still a pan seat. This one is a factory cushioned pan seat. You can still buy those. You can get the silver ones or the red and white ones like that one. This right here is your touch control. So this is an auxiliary valve which goes down here, and that was an option on all the Super Cs. So that they didn't all come factory with a fast hitch, but you could buy them with one. So here's your governor control, your throttle, and these are your left and right touch control units. This one right here is connected all the way through on the other side. You could get the option of a fourth one, and the reason for that was you had separate right and left rigs on your cultivator, so you could put one here, and then you could turn and pick up the front with one and then pick up the back with the other one if you didn't have the fast hitch. And then in 1954 they came out with the 100 through 400 and then a 600. The 600 was not a row crop, it was a wheatland. So the Super C is a row crop tractor, and it was designed just for that, for cultivating and planting row crops. 3 different front axles were available: the dual front axle, single front axle, or an adjustable wide tread front end. The back wheels slid on the axle in or out. You just loosened up some clamps down there, and you could actually use the fast hitch on this tractor. The fast hitch on the Super C had power down, power up. So unlike the new compact tractors where they're power up and gravity down, this one actually had down pressure, so you could put a block of wood under it, and depending on which side of the tractor you wanted to jack up, you could put, say, a block of wood into this side, push your hydraulics down, and then it would lift the tire off, so you didn't have to use a jack. The tractor was its own jack. Gone through and greased up this tractor. There's tons of grease fittings, tons and tons. But the first thing we want to do is, you've got 2 petcocks here, and when you fill the oil, you're going to close this one and leave this one open, and then when the oil starts coming at the top, that's when you know that you have enough oil in it. So the first Supers came out in 1948 with the Super A, and then they came out with the Super C, the Super H, Super M, and then they just switched over to a number. Power takeoff on this tractor is engaged here. It's transmission driven, so you have to push the clutch in, and this tractor is what they call collar shift, meaning you have to push the clutch in and stop every time you want to change gears. Some people will power shift and do all these things, but you can have a catastrophic failure power shifting these old collar shift tractors, so don't do it. And your oil pressure gauge. So this tractor runs straight up and down, so it has good oil pressure. And then down here on the dashboard, which is backlit, I'll show you that. It's a little bit difficult to get to, but you'll see top left is your ammeter. The switch at the top is your ignition. The little black knob below the ignition is the fuse for the lights, your water temperature gauge, and then the light switch, off, dim, and bright. Choke lever right here. This right here is a touch control temp gauge up there, and if they went into the hot, that means it was already too late. They were discontinued after a couple of years because they just weren't necessary. Now these rods right here, there's one on each side. This one adjusts the pitch side to side, and this one over here adjusts the tilt forward and back. So essentially, this is the primitive or original version of what today people would call a top and tilt. So a top and tilt has a hydraulic 3-point top link, and then the adjustment here on the 3-point would also be hydraulic. So you could do all the things with a new tractor, just like this one, but this one came out in 1953, so it's kind of the pioneer of the top and tilt. And these big tires on here, they are made for a smoother ride in the fields. Gas tank, and then your hood. Here's your oil fill, air cleaner with a dust bowl, the muffler. I always paint those with stove paint. Here's your distributor, original coil. Frame weights in addition to wheel weights. Here's your 6-volt generator, carburetor, air cleaner. These were pretty much an off-the-shelf air cleaner, and these were a Donaldson air cleaner, and the Fordsons had them. Pretty much everybody had this air cleaner. So did IH make everything on this tractor? No, they sure didn't. Nobody did. John Deere didn't, Case didn't, Massey Ferguson didn't. They used a lot of things that were off the shelf that were shared across the board. So this right here is the same rock shaft as on the other side, so it's controlled by the left hand touch control here, and the right one does this one. So here's your brakes, springs, and your brake pads are in there. Battery. One of the things people run into with these tractors is they put too small of a battery cable on it. Now 6-volt, so 6 volts are a low voltage, high resistance. So if you only have a 12-volt style cable on here, they tend to not start too well or don't charge right, and that's could be one of your first problems. And this right here is a positive ground, so you'll see that the positive goes to a ground here, and some people ground it over here, but I like it here because this is the chassis, and if you ground it over here, then you've got to go through a whole bunch of other nuts and bolts, and hopefully that your ground works. Power takeoff on the back. This right here was a factory work light that also had a tail light on it, so when you turn the knob you could get either the white light for a work light or a red light for a tail light when you drove down the road. So these tractors came with a factory fuel gauge, and it's called your eyeball or a clean stick. And we got way plenty of gas in here, so we're almost a full tank. So we want to burn some of that up before we put it away anyway. These disc brakes replace the band brakes that were on the C. So one of the easiest ways to tell if it's a Super C or a C is, well, first of all, you can see there's a big hole between the top of the hydraulics and the gas tank. And second is the brake pedals are curved. The Super C has curved brake pedals, and this little beam right here on a C is straight. So they changed that, and then the brakes are a dead giveaway also. Same tires all around, same weights. The seat was the same. Basically, you know, this much of the tractor was pretty much the same. The touch control came out in 1948 on the Cubs, the Super A, and the C. So the Super C was the first larger tractor of the Super C of the Super Series. The Super A came out in 1948, so that was actually the first. This whole piece right here is what they call a torque tube, and it has your drive shaft, your clutch levers, all encased in there. And IH actually got sued by Allis Chalmers because Allis Chalmers had pioneered that torque tube with their Allis Chalmers B in the 1930s. So those came out. The A came out in 1939, and that was the first tractor that IH had that used the torque tube. I bought this adapter pre-pandemic, before prices went crazy, so but they're astronomical. You may be able to find a used one somewhere. They're kind of rare. What's even more rare is the one that goes from 3-point hitch to fast hitch. So if you have a tractor with a 3-point hitch, it allows you to put the fast hitch implements on. And those are scarce as hen's teeth. It's not an exact science with this adapter. The original IH ones had a different kind of top link on them. It's more like a horseshoe kind of thing, which sometimes didn't fit exactly. This one just has a couple of pieces of flat steel with a bunch of holes, and it works pretty well. With the fast hitch, you can adjust your 3-point hitch hydraulically. It's kind of like what the modern top and tilt is without having to add all kinds of extra circuits. But it amounts to the same thing. It's still essentially top and tilt. And I'll show you how that works. Alright, so we're gonna raise it with this valve over here on the right. And so the rock shaft on the right side of the tractor is pinned, or goes all the way through to the left side, so it's the same on both sides. And what this does, this is your top, right? So in top and tilt, this would be the top part. So whenever you're lifting it up or putting it down, you can get the adjustment that you want. And the rock shaft on the left, there's only one. And what this does is it tilts it side to side. And that's great for like a grader blade or some other implement that you want to be able to tilt. So there we go. First thing I want to do is make sure my gates are closed. The guy that bought this originally, he had it behind his compact tractor. He used it to spread salt on his driveway. So this is a metal one. Obviously salt didn't do it any favors, so the whole mechanism, it wasn't rotted, but it was seized up when I bought it. So it took some work to get it freed up, and then it just always has surface rust on it. So I think the rust started, and so now every year I have to prime it and paint it again, and it just seems like I'm never going to get caught up with it. But regardless, if you're going to spread salt, do yourself a favor and get a poly spreader with an apron so that you're not throwing all the junk back at your tractor. I've seen some tractors people spread salt with, and I've never seen such a rotted out mess in my life. So if I could get 2 more in there, you'd be at about 560. So with a SuperC, 550, 600 pounds is probably plenty on the back. Now, the pitfall of most of these old tractors is they were designed for farming, not necessarily operator comfort. Operator comfort was something that kind of came at a later date, and as people started complaining about it, that's when they started fixing it. So the early tractors, getting on and off, can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So you kind of have to I climb up the back on these tractors. You can climb up however you want, but I climb up on, depending on what side the light's on, is the side I climb up on. But I always tend to get up on the right and go down on the left, so you can do it however you want, but that's pretty much the gist of it. One of the things I want to show you that this tractor has, it's a hook that is used for unhooking the fast hitch, and you can see right there at the end of this, there's the loops, they call them the ears, for the fast hitch, and this will hook in there and you pull it up, and then you do the same on the other side, and you go ahead and your attachment will come off, so you don't have to get off the tractor to attach or detach implements that don't have a power shaft on them. Alright, so with this tractor, first thing you do is push the clutch in. Now I've got the brakes locked, so this tractor will overpower the brakes. So take the brakes off and hold it with your other foot and give it a little bit of choke. Switch on right here, here's your distributor kill switch. And then these tractors are super prone to flooding, so as soon as it fires, you kill the choke. So you pretend there's a gear there, which there isn't, but you hit that kind of loosens up the linkages, then you can just slide it right into gear. Give some throttle. So we're in first gear, and the next thing I want to do is I want to put the power takeoff on, which is down here. Foot still has to be on the clutch. Get that open, and we're going to open our gauge here on the chute, and we're off. So I'm going to give it a little bit of throttle so it'll spin a little faster and move a little faster. And then it just goes right in. I like to do it with the throttle down. If you have it up too much, it tends to grind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go low speed but high RPMs, and that'll broadcast. so as soon as I let the clutch out, it's going to start throwing lime. Beautiful fall day here in Maine. It's always a good idea to put the lime down right before you're going to get rain, but not a heavy rain. The rain will help beat it into the ground, but a heavy rain might wash it off. So one of the good signs that you need some lime, especially these old fields, is you'll start seeing plants that love acid soil coming in. So I've got the junipers, which inherently love acid soil, but more importantly, I've got these little scrub pines, these little field pines trying to make their way back in. Alright, so we're back up in the driveway, and it has a narrow front end, so it doesn't have power steering, but it might as well be. They steer really nice. Alright, and then to stop, you just push your clutch in. Level spot, you don't need to use the brakes, and then throttle it back, and kill the ignition. I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up, and you don't need to hang around while I wash it out. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.